All right. Piggybacking off of company growth, according to a report by Internet or Entertainment Software Association, the gaming industry is growing at 4 times the rate of the U.S. economy.
Jeez. Okay.
The industry grew 9.7% from 2009 to 2012, whereas the growth for the U.S. economy was just 2.4%. In the same period, video game-related employment rose at an annual rate of 9% versus the total U.S. employment rate, which was 0.724%. And total employment, direct and indirect, that depends on the video game industry, now exceeds 146,000 people.
Nice.
And I got all those stats from an IGN article.
Okay.
So yeah, dude, the thing it ain't slowing down.
Right.
The train is off the tracks and it's just going.
Yeah. I don't really know, because I feel like, if you're gonna compare something to, if you're gonna compare
such an unfair comparison.
Yeah,
I know.
it's like putting a graph up and you only show the range from 90 to 100 instead of 0 to 100.
Yeah.
You're like, look how much growth.
Yeah.
It's like when you're comparing it to the U.S. economy, of course it's not going to be going up to
Exactly.
5-6% growth. And so people that aren't necessarily financially savvy, you'd be like, holy crap,
The U.S. economy
blows. I think that the source of the article and what the article's getting at is probably true. Is that it is
it's booming.
It's like accumulating inertia, not just specific games or specific like campaigns, but yeah, just the industry as a whole is becoming this thing, and yeah, I don't really know. It looks like it's going to be something where it's going to start seeping into more and more kind of irregular audiences.
No, it's already doing that.
Yeah,
dude. Mobile games are so pervasive in everyday life.
Moms.
And people don't realize that they're gaming.
Yeah.
They really don't.
Yeah.
But the amount of people playing Candy Crush and Farmville and whatever else, even if it's just like Mall Mega Story and stuff like that. It's everywhere.
No, that's good, man.
It's
I
great.
promote it. I know you do.
Plus, think about Grand Theft Auto 5 is the biggest entertainment launch of all time.
Yeah.
I think the most lucrative entertainment product ever.
Right, and they're re-upping it again, right?
Not a movie, I want to see. We need to get what the total size of Hollywood's industry is, and then the total for gaming.
Gaming do relative
because people always cite Hollywood films as like this world cultural driver.
Mm-hmm.
But if gaming is bigger, that means that there's a big conversation not being had about the influence of games abroad. And it's kind of unfair to say that as if that's what I'm focusing my 25-page paper thesis on, even. Is I'm just like, dude,
video
games are like the biggest cultural driver in the world.
Well, the only thing about, why I would endorse the idea that Hollywood is more influential than video gaming is because the barrier to entry to accessing or not the barrier to entry, but just having access to a movie is so much lower. There's so much more access and ease of being able to access a movie than there is, because you have to buy the console, you have to have all the wires and internet capabilities, and then you have to buy the game, you have to buy the controllers and stuff. There's a lot more things that you have to have in order to enjoy games, but it's like whenever people do that, they're spending a significantly larger amount of time playing games than they would be watching these movies or whatever. So,
which is perfectly valid when you're talking about console games. But if you think of like PC gaming, which is
have to have a PC, have to have a PC game.
Everybody, I know, but it's pretty much a given that if you're going to be a part of the developed world, you're going to have a computer.
Right.
And not only that, but even in places like China, where everyone does have a computer, the biggest type of games there are free-to-play games, which that's a free entry.
Yeah.
And of course, like we saw with South Park, they're going to make their money in other ways. But when you start having games that are just coming on devices that you already need for everyday life anyway, then it becomes super pervasive.
Right, yeah. And there are studies now that say that more people have access to smartphones even, than people that have access to clean water. in the
Holy
world.
hell.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So that would be a point to what you're saying is like if everybody can do this mobile gaming stuff and that's becoming a bigger emerging market, then yeah, everybody has access to these games and stuff, even if they just the free stuff. What about like we talk about games. We always talk usually about video games, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, when you say the gaming industry, when you say the gaming industry, does that exclude any physical sort of game-like interaction? I mean, would you count Monopoly in the gaming industry?
That's an interesting question. Because when I think of the gaming industry, I only think about video games. But there are still like tabletop gaming conventions, and tabletop gaming is still, it's definitely not as big as video games are, but it's still a thing. I mean, we have 2 board game stores within a mile of us.
Yeah,
2,
dude.
Well,
I was just curious about
I don't know
how it's considered.
That's a good question though. But even there are video games that are made today that use elements from board games.
That's what I was hoping.
And not only that, but people even say that the video games as we know it, RPGs, text-based games that came out in like the 80s, wouldn't have existed the way they do now without Dungeons and Dragons. So,
okay.
That's another
interesting
layer.
You just kind of wonder because it seemed like it was the progression happened where it was we had these physical games, then we moved to a digital format. But now people are kind of missing. I feel like a lot of people, myself included, I like being able to interact with things, and there's a certain lack of interaction that happens whenever you're on a purely digital format. It's like, oh, I'm pressing this button and it's happening over there, but like I'm not feeling it do that. Like I'm not picking up the dog on the Monopoly board and putting it on this thing, collecting my $200 physically and like counting it in my hand, So
you kind of like the process is almost as important
I like
as
the physical reality of things, know? Sometimes digital does so many things that are like beyond my scope of understanding, but sometimes it's fun to just interact with stuff. Like
that's true.
Cards for Humanity, like throwing your thing down.
Well, check this out. Now you've got properties like Skylanders, or Nintendo came out with their so-called Amiibo toys, and what that
Never
is
heard of it.
is and then Disney has Disney Infinity. So these are 3 big corporations that do this. And what it is you buy this game and you buy this little platform for it, and then you buy figurines. And when you buy a new figurine, you put it on your platform, that puts the character in the game, and then you do stuff with that character.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So, bridge the gap.
So that is a way of like having a physical toy that you can play with outside of the game, but then you can put it on your platform and have it in your world.
Right. Or even imagine if you did it for academic purposes. Like if you had a video game that your kid genuinely loved. You had a calculator that had a Wi-Fi thing, and it attached to the game. And in order for this kid to get to the next level, he had to solve this math problem or something, And he like calculated it, and it's wrong until he gets it right, and then it's like, congratulations, you learned how to do calculus.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool would that be? I mean, it doesn't have to be just for entertainment purposes. I mean, I can see bridging that physical digital gap being used for a lot of different stuff, and I feel like family interactions would really benefit from that too. Having that tangible thing there that everybody can kind of like focus on.
Would you consider like Rock Band to be a tangible thing where me and my family can get together with some guitars? And
those are just kind of like different kinds of controllers, but yeah, I mean, it's something that you can interact with, and your physical movement is the reason why the game is progressing. So your physical actions are.
Then what about the Nintendo Wii? Because that's your physical movement interacting with the game.
Yeah.
Is that getting a little too far away from what you're trying to get at?
I think that's probably like the edge of what I'm considering as far as like bridging that gap, because that ultimately still feels digital. It feels like I'm just have 2 sticks, and I'm just, instead of doing this, I'm just doing this, in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I guess like I think that there's still a lot of people that like playing board games, that like having a physical touch with some different things. I like counting money in Monopoly, man. I do. Who doesn't? You
get the house down.
You get your $500 bill. You're like, boom, boom, boom. I'll get a hotel on it. Park Place. But yeah, I just think that it'd be cool to like have more possibilities where like if I do something on this table that's sitting in front of me, it'll actually show up in that game somehow.
They've made card games where you have a mat, and using the PlayStation Eye, you put a card down and it like turns your card into a dragon.
Or imagine even if we had a just like like a mat, like almost like a yoga mat that was just a rectangle, and we played Magic on it.
Right.
What if it had like a Wi-Fi receiver where we put down a card, it comes up on the screen, and then the freaking monster comes out, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
sick, right?
That would be That's
what I'm thinking.
Sick, right?
Yeah.
I know. Someone call up so and so. Let's
Please.
get this going.
But then you lose so much of the fun that happens from actually playing the card game if you just sit on two sticks and watch the dragons do whatever they're gonna do. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, okay, well, I summoned the dragon. Cool, it happened. But when you're like, boom, lay it down. You know, it's like you did that.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
Well, that was a great conversation that sort of
Little
sprang off
aside.
that.